天的关键对话，台湾在过去1年来低薪的问题总是不解，到底这元凶来自于何处？很可能来自于科技发展哦。今天关键对话为您专访到的是矽谷创业家，同时也是趋势专家马丁福特。他预言说，随着现在科技越来越智慧化，所以取代了很多人类的工作，未来将造成大篇幅的，包括了失业率大幅增加、购买力下降，不仅让贫富的差距越来越大，还可能酿成是新的经济危机。
用电脑欣赏出去旅游的照片，欣赏完了以后，再用平板逛网拍选择要买的衣服。科技在我们的生活当中已经无所不在了。不过，会不会有一天它也冲击到我们的未来呢？关键时刻掌握关键对话。大家好，我是楚文。我们今天为您邀请到了一位矽谷的创业家 Martin Ford。他最近因为提出科技的进步是造成美国失业率升高的原因这个论点，在美国声名大噪。到底为什么他身为一个科技人，却认为科技可能会对未来经济造成不好的影响呢？我们今天就为您专访他，来一起探讨。我们一起来欢迎 Martin Ford。Hello, nice to meet you, Martin.
Hi, Ashley. Hi, everyone.
We know that you are an entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, but even though that you are familiar with technology and benefit from it, you told everybody that technology may one day threaten our life. Why do you have this idea?
Well, the main concern that I have is that in the future, machines, technology, robots, smart software are increasingly going to take over more of the work in the economy. In the future, a lot of people end up without jobs, or if their incomes are very low because technology is now doing all that work, then that's a big issue that we have to begin to think about.
In your observation, what kind of job will be threatened more?
It's not about the skill level or how much education you have. It's about whether or not the job is predictable. And you know, the fact is that a lot of people go to college or to university and they get a degree, and then they end up as a knowledge worker. They sit in front of a desk, in front of a computer, but they do the same kind of thing again and again. Maybe they're producing the same sort of report again, or the same kind of analysis. And it turns out that smart algorithms, smart software can do a lot of that work automatically now. So it's not just low skill jobs at all, it's jobs at all skill levels.
So even like the job of doctor, lawyer, or even like us journalists, one day may lose our job because of the robot?
Well, we're already seeing an impact in those areas. For example, there are systems that can do basic journalism. They can't do what you're doing, but they can systems that can produce basic news stories about, for example, sports or about financial reporting, those types of things. And those systems are going to get better and better. Lawyers are also being impacted in the United States by systems that can do document review, that do a lot of the more routine work that lawyers used to do. Really, all kinds of occupations at all skill levels are being impacted already. And you know, as we look to the future, 10, 20 years in the future, it's pretty clear that a lot of the impact is going to get much more dramatic.
So how will they affect our economy in the future?
Well, the concern is that if we really in the future don't have enough jobs to go around so that people become unemployed, or if maybe people are competing for the jobs that are there and so the wages are driven down, then you don't have consumers that have enough purchasing power to really buy the products and services being produced by the economy. And that can kind of lead to a sort of a deflationary scenario where, you know, there just isn't enough demand to really drive the economy. And you kind of see that in Japan, for example, already. You know, Japan has been in deflation now for decades, and this is something that could make that much worse in the future.
But in the past, everybody see robots replace the labor force will increase the productivity that will make economy grow.
In the past, it is true that this concern has been raised. You know, people worried about this in the past, but it's never really happened.
Yes.
I think the reason is that the technology simply wasn't advanced enough. In the future, we're seeing developments in artificial intelligence and robotics that really suggest we're going to have a dramatic impact. So I think that we will see finally a real impact in terms of the number of jobs that are out there, perhaps not being enough to provide work for everyone that needs it.
So you think that the rise of robot will do harm to the economy because of the unemployment rate will grow and the consumption will decrease, right?
That's right. That's the risk if we don't adapt to it. If we just let things go and the technology becomes more and more advanced, then I think that's the risk that it could happen. We could have lots of unemployment and maybe a stagnant, even declining economy. In the United States, in the years after World War II up until 1973, productivity increased and so did wages. But since the 1970s, productivity increases, but wages are just flat. So, you know, the problem is that most people are not benefiting from that increase in productivity anymore. It's all being captured by a few people at the top. The few rich people are getting all the benefits from productivity increases.
So the gap between rich people and the poor people will expand in the future.
That's right. It becomes more unequal, more concentrated. You know, more and more of the income is just going to a tiny number of very rich people at the top, and all of this technology will just make that worse.
Do you think that will be the biggest challenge for the government in every country in the future?
I think that'll be a huge challenge, yes. I think that perhaps in the next couple of decades, this is going to become a much bigger issue than it is now. People will begin to understand what's happening, and it's politically very hard to imagine something like a guaranteed income. I mean, it'll be a tremendous political and social problem to overcome. So I do think that it's going to be very important in the future.
Will there cause crisis in the economy in the future?
It's possible we could have an unemployment crisis where really a huge number of people just don't have jobs. As I said earlier, we could end up in a problem where there aren't enough people to buy the things that are being produced, so we get into kind of an economic crisis. You know, people that are unemployed can't pay their debts either, so we could have another debt crisis, just like we had in 2008 in the United States. So there is definitely the potential for a crisis if we don't recognize what's happening and adapt to it.
In Taiwan, we also face the problem. Younger people, they graduated and they only get very low salary. Do you think that it is not a problem in Taiwan? It is a global problem that we will face for all human beings.
Right. I think that all of this is really a global problem. It's showing up in different countries in different ways. I mean, we have something similar in the United States. You know, a lot of people at entry level are not getting the kind of opportunities that they once did. And part of it is that, you know, entry-level people, when they first graduate, what they've traditionally done is they've done more routine things, right? That's how you learn on the job. You do something that's routine where you're doing the same kind of thing again and again, but a lot of those opportunities are disappearing or they're being de-skilled, so the technology does a lot of it and it really doesn't require much skill or training for a person to do what's left. So I think that trend will get more and more important in the future, and it's a problem that we're going to have to figure out a way to solve.
So in the future, how can we solve this problem? Or how can we make us adapt to this new situation?
And you know, in the short term, I think we can do things in terms of education. We can try to make sure that people learn to be creative, so that they learn to do things that are genuinely not repetitive. Because if you're doing something that's repetitive, then you know it's kind of inevitable that you're going to get replaced by a machine eventually. But in the longer run, probably we need something more radical than that, because there just won't be enough jobs to go around. I think one thing that could be looked at is some kind of a guaranteed income, so that everyone has some sort of at least minimal income, whether they have a real job or not.
Thank you, Martin. 刚刚 Martin 有提到了，随着科技越来越智慧化，未来不只是劳力型的低阶工作，甚至是高阶的脑力型工作都可能会被取代，而这也造成了失业率可能会越来越高，消费力却逐渐下滑的经济危机。不只是台湾，全世界的政府都面临这样的问题，也成为人类社会新的考验。